Joseph Cheney & Sons has been making shoes in Desborough since 1896. They do things the old-fashioned way. The leather is still hand-cut, although some modern help is now allowed. The pieces are stitched together to make the upper. They end up here, where they're attached to a welt. This is soft cork material, which makes the shoe so comfortable. And now it's time for a sole. 300 pairs made this way every day before some extra buff and polishing, and then boxing and shipping out. Handmade in England still means a lot, enough to justify the $450 price tag for a pair.
This is where the process all starts. This is what we call the skin room. And actually in here you don't have to look far to see the various brands on the wrappers that have come from European sources.
Yeah. But the raw material is almost all from Europe. Fine calf's leather that arrives daily across the EU's open borders. But for how much longer?
Our business is actually hugely transactional within the European Union. We've got raw material coming in here virtually every day, and we convert that raw material here with the skilled labour that we've got into great shoes, and then a proportion of those shoes we export back to those same countries. So of course frictionless trade for us is hugely important.
A hard Brexit, or the dreaded no-deal scenario, would almost certainly mean tariffs being placed on all the leather that goes to make these shoes, and those extra costs would have to be passed on to the consumer, making an already expensive pair of English handmade shoes even more expensive.
The British fashion industry is worth $36 billion a year. And like any other sector, it's the uncertainty over Brexit which is making people so nervous.
Business deals with change pretty well, and good businesses deal with change very well. What they don't deal with is uncertainty, and the uncertainty is the bad thing at the moment. That's the potential killer at the moment, is not knowing, because you can't plan, you can't invest on something you don't know. So we really have to know as soon as possible.
At Cheney & Sons, they accept Brexit is coming and they're ready to adapt. There's confidence in the product. But as the politicians enter the final stages of negotiations, they're hoping their voice will be heard and not drowned out by the political squabbling. They're hoping for a deal that preserves their skills and jobs and the communities that depend on them. Simon McGregor-Wood, TRT World in Desborough, Northamptonshire.
And for more on the story, Kallum Pickering joins me now from London. He's senior UK economist at investment bank Berenberg. Thank you so much for your time. Firstly, the EU Commission President, European Council President Donald Tusk says he has no grounds for optimism that a deal will be reached at tomorrow's EU summit in Brussels. That's after Prime Minister Theresa May briefed her cabinet on Brexit for 3 hours, sounding more optimistic. What's your view on progress? Do you fall in the Donald Tusk camp or the Theresa May camp?
Well, it's hard to say, of course. When it comes to these things, there's always a lot of political posturing. There's a slim chance that we may get a little handshake for the cameras tomorrow, but chances are there's still some pretty difficult stuff to get through in the negotiations, and it will simply be too much of a step for UK and EU negotiators to come up with an agreement tomorrow. Remember, the head negotiator for the UK, Dominic Raab, headed to Brussels on Sunday when technocrats had an agreement on the final deal. He was the one that scuppered it, mainly because he knew there'd be objections on the UK side. Those objections remain. So chances are we may get a little smiling tomorrow, but I think the next 2 to 3 weeks will be when the negotiations really come to a head and hopefully a deal is struck.
Interesting. And one of the difficult issues that you pointed to was the issue of avoiding a hard border between the UK's Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which, as we know, is in the EU. Hardcore Brexiteers are balking at a proposal for the UK to stay in the customs union after the Brexit deadline, or that Northern Ireland receive some sort of special treatment. From an economic point of view, what's the best outcome on that issue?
Well, of course, the best outcome for the UK and for Northern Ireland, and indeed for the Republic of Ireland in the EU, is to come up with a situation in which the Northern Irish border, both to the EU on the southern side to the Republic of Ireland and to the east of it to the UK remains open after the UK leaves the single market and the customs union. Of course, this is tricky stuff to negotiate. The current proposals don't really work from the Brexiteers' perspective in the UK. What they're currently trying to figure out is what kind of emergency backstop can come in place in case the UK and the EU cannot agree something in time for the Brexit date. That again is causing even more problems, because what the EU is effectively asking the UK to do is promise to stay within its regulatory orbit and the customs union for an undefined period after Brexit. That is difficult for the Brexiteers within the Conservative government to accept.
Yes, and as we heard in Simon McGregor-Wood's story, UK companies, big and small, are already working towards a no-deal type of scenario. A no-deal scenario is one where obviously they don't reach some sort of a free trade agreement with the EU. What's your feeling on this? With less than 6 months to go until the Brexit deadline, do you think the UK and the EU might still be able to clinch a trade deal?
Yeah, that seems to be the most likely outcome. I see probably a 20% chance of a no-deal hard Brexit. That still leaves a good 80% for a deal that is either a sort of semi-soft Brexit, a trade deal in goods, or maybe even something better. Of course, these things have to go down to the wire. There are clear differences between the UK and the EU positions which need to be resolved. But the big question actually doesn't come if the UK and the EU can agree a deal. I think that is certainly possible. Of course, with some clever wording, diplomats can always agree on something. But the difficult question is whether or not that deal can then pass through UK Parliament. Within the UK Conservative government, there are different views on what Brexit should look like, and it's not certain that without some cross-party help, the Prime Minister would indeed be able to get through Parliament whatever she can manage to agree with the EU.
And what about the issue of companies and businesses taking their headquarters elsewhere, leaving London for places like Paris or Frankfurt? From what you're seeing, do you see any evidence of that happening, and will it be as bad as some had forecast?
No, not in a major way. So long as the UK can avoid a hard Brexit and remains fairly pragmatic with its economic policies, and by that I mean we avoid the Jeremy Corbyn risk, the far-left guy who is now leading Labour, chances are the UK will still do fine in the long run. My estimate would be that if the UK and the EU can strike a deal for trading goods, the UK can grow in the long run at around 1.7% annually. That would be a little lower than the 2.1% growth the UK was enjoying inside the EU. It's not a great outcome, but certainly from a European average point of view, 1.7% growth is certainly nothing to shrug about when the European average is probably around 1.5%.
Listen, Kallum Pickering, before you go, just a quick straw poll. The Brexit deadline is obviously March next year. What's your feeling? Will the UK leave the EU come hell or high water?
My best guess would be that in November, the UK and the EU will strike a deal. If we're lucky, it will pass through Parliament in December. If we're unlucky, it will be in January. And by February, we won't be worrying about Brexit that much. And with luck, we will roll into some transition agreement in March 2019 when the UK is due to leave.
Interesting. Kallum Pickering in London, thank you for your time.